I welcome State Representative Daniel Hernandez from LD2 to Chandler Pride's educational features. And we invited you here today to talk about many things to do with the LGBT community, but specifically the LGBT caucus at the legislature. And to start off, can you tell me a little bit about how you started in politics?
Yeah, so I've been working in advocacy since I was 18 years old. One of the first things that I ever did was an internship on a campaign for Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. But around the same time, there was actually a commission here in the city of Tucson that specifically worked on LGBTQI issues. And I was appointed to the commission by the mayor at the age of 18, and I served for about a year and a half, the end of somebody else's unexpired term, working in advocacy for the LGBTQ community, trying to make sure that we had more resources going to the Latino community and also to young people who are recently coming out. So I've been involved in LGBTQ advocacy now for 13 years here in the state of Arizona. I ran for a school board in 2011. And then shortly thereafter ran for the legislature in 2016. And when I got in the state house in 2016, I realized that there were 3 openly gay members of the House and 1 openly gay member of the Senate. But we had never actually formed a caucus. And I thought it would be important to make sure that we created a better and stronger voice for the LGBTQ community. So along with my friends and colleagues who were openly LGBTQ, we started the first ever LGBTQ caucus in the Arizona State Legislature to bring in outside stakeholders to be able to have conversations about some of the most important and pressing issues for the LGBTQ community. So we could make sure that we work together to put proposals for good bills forward, and then also work to defeat some of the really bad bills like the trans athlete ban that has been introduced here in the state of Arizona.
And you were involved in efforts to pretty much get rid of the No Promo Homo legislature that was in place sometime back.
Yeah, so in 1991, the state of Arizona passed a bill that made it actually illegal for public schools in Arizona to even have conversations about the LGBTQ community. This became colloquially known as the No Promo Homo Law because you couldn't talk about the LGBTQ community. So from 1991 until 2019, it was in place and it made it illegal for us to have conversations about even people like Harvey Milk, Billie Jean King. You couldn't talk about them because you could potentially risk your funding. So in 2019, I was able to work together with a coalition of Democrats and Republicans, including folks in the business community, to actually get rid of this law. So in 2019, I led the coalition as the chair of the LGBTQ Caucus to repeal this harmful anti-LGBTQ law. And then in the 2 years since, have actually had to beat back attempts to put it back into place. So we lost a couple of bills that I think were important to us, including the non-discrimination bill that had bipartisan support. It wasn't able to get all the way through the legislature, but we've been able to successfully kill attempts to undermine our community once again by reinstituting parts of the No Promo Homo Law. So while we haven't had all the wins that we wanted yet, we've been able to make great progress. And I think for the first time in 28 years during the time that I was alive, because I was 1 year old when that law went into effect, we're now in a situation where public schools can at the very least acknowledge that we exist. There's still a lot of work to do to make sure that we better create curricula that actually talks about the LGBTQ community, but it's baby steps. It's one thing at a time. And I think that's the thing that I'm always telling people. It's about incremental growth and progress here in Arizona because we've had decades of bad stuff that we need to fix.
So along the lines of, trying to make incremental changes, what are some of the obstacles that you face? And, are there things that we as like us, like Chandler Pride can do to help normalize the community and just, make it a part of, everyone's life?
I think one of the biggest things that people can do is to reach out to their own lawmakers, build a relationship with them, get to know them. I can't tell you how oftentimes the biggest issue that we're seeing is lack of education around the LGBTQ community in the Arizona State Legislature. So it's not that people are actively trying to hurt our community, it's that a lot of times they don't know about our community and the needs that we have, some of which are a little bit unique. When I'm talking to folks about non-discrimination for housing, public accommodations. And before the Supreme Court did this, employment, people would say, well, is this even a problem? And it would be important for me to be able to say, yes, let me actually connect you with people who have been discriminated against trying to get housing, trying to have a job or keep a job. So I think it's really important that we don't assume the worst intentions of people and that we try and really take this as an opportunity to educate people who may not be well versed and who may not understand the unique needs of our community. So I think the biggest thing is, one, reach out to find out who your lawmakers are, invite them to coffee, invite them to get to know them a little bit better, and most importantly, build that relationship so that when they're making decisions about our community, they're not thinking about just this acronym LGBTQIA plus. They're saying, what I'm going to do is going to have an impact on Eduarda. What I'm going to do is going to have an impact on Daniel. What I'm going to do is going to have a negative impact on so many people who now I actually know people who are a part of this community.
So in the city of Chandler, where we have, well, we are one of many groups that are working towards a non-discrimination ordinance, and it's really interesting to see, like you said, the process and how education is very necessary, and we as a group are trying to find ways to do just that, educate, and this is why we do these videos. And do you find that ultimately, in your experience, that once you have provided some education, that you can actually seek a little bit of a turnaround, that people become a little bit more open to something changing?
I think there's a lot to be said for helping educate my colleagues in the legislature. And the reason I bring it up is because when I started in the legislature, we had never had a bipartisan bill that had to do with LGBTQ non-discrimination. But what I ended up being able to do was work with several partners, including Equality Arizona and One Community, to actually get several Republicans to actually co-sponsor that legislation. So now it wasn't just, we need to win them over. Now it was, they were advocates and they were champions of the work that we were trying to do. And that only happened because we spent many years educating them, bringing people from their own districts to meet with them so they would have a face to put to the LGBTQ community. It wasn't this abstract. It was people that they knew and it was people that they liked because they had built that relationship. So I think it's crucial that we spend this time working. And I think here's the thing. I'm very patient, and as an LGBTQ lawmaker, I have to assume the best intentions at all times for my colleagues. But when there are people who are not in the legislature, I think it's really easy to get frustrated and to get mad. But I think we need to be a little bit more patient and a little bit more forgiving, because when we are talking to some folks, like I have lawmakers who came to the first ever LGBTQ caucus event we ever did. And at that event, we wanted to do something fun. So we invited drag queens. My colleagues, two of them that were Republicans, had never seen a drag queen and didn't understand what that was. And they just assumed that, oh, these are men that want to be women. So then we had to use that as an educational opportunity to talk to them and say, here's the difference between a trans person and a drag queen. Here's the difference between somebody who does this because they want to entertain and they want to do this as something where they're, making a career out of it. And here's someone who feels like the body that they were born in was not the correct body and that they need affirmation, whether it's through, hormone therapy, medical treatments and interventions. And here's why we need to cover these things. So it was a really great opportunity, but it would have been really easy for me and some of the other people there to just say, oh my God, how can they not know the basics between like a drag queen and a trans person? And it's really easy to get upset because I think we live and breathe this stuff 24/7, 7 days a week. But for those who have never been around a trans person, for those that think they've never been around a gay person, because let me tell you, some of my colleagues are like, I don't know any gay people. I'm like, that person who has lived with your uncle and their roommates for 30, that's not just a roommate anymore. So there's a lot of things that I think we need to do to be a little bit more forgiving and being patient. It's not for everybody. Like, we don't need every person to be the advocate who is standing up and speaking on behalf of all gay people, all lesbian people, all trans people. We just need you to be a little bit forgiving and thoughtful in your approach and say, okay, here's why what you said is really kind of problematic and potentially harmful, but let me tell you why it's a problem, as opposed to you're evil, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe. Because that's, I think, some of what I've seen where there are people who come and meet with lawmakers and they're like, they're transphobic. And I'm like, do they even know what a trans person is? Like, let's take a step back and say, do they know what this means? And if not, let's use that as a learning opportunity.
But I think that, being an advocate, like I am an ally, I'm the parent of a trans child, and my journey to, and then it's not over. I mean, my journey to become, the best ally possible is ongoing, and I have learned a lot. I don't know everything. And I also have to be willing to say, I'm sorry, I didn't know that was inappropriate. Let me correct, what I said, kind of a thing. And I think that, advocates have to be really brave, courageous people to go up against, to actually put forth, education, because sometimes, people that you want to actually have the power to make a difference are very, very unwilling to have conversations. And so that's a little bit hard.
And that's why I say we have to be patient. We have to be thoughtful in our approach. And this is not for everybody. Like, not everyone has to be an advocate, but that's why I invite people who are watching this to think about reaching out to their lawmakers and building that relationship. Because it's so much easier to talk to people about issues that you care about when you have a relationship with them than somebody who's a stranger who's reaching out for the first time.
Yeah. Can you also, I know that you're also somebody that is very involved in gun violence. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been working on gun violence prevention for the better part of a decade. It started because when I was an intern in the office of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, I was there the day of the shooting where she and 12 others were injured and 6 were killed. So for me, gun violence prevention has been an issue that's really important, because we know that when there's the presence of a gun, there is a likelier outcome for folks to do things to harm themselves or to harm others, particularly when there are mental health issues. We've seen over the years that in the presence of people who have suicidal ideation, the presence of a gun makes it more likely that they'll be able to actually kill themselves. So this is an issue that is cutting across not just the Latino community, not just the African-American community, but especially the LGBTQ community, because we see that particularly amongst people who might have depression or suicidal ideation, the presence of a gun makes it more likely that they will actually hurt themselves. So working on this issue is, I think, important, because every day over 90 Americans are being killed because of guns. And there are so many things that we can do, particularly starting with requiring background checks on all gun sales to ensure that people who shouldn't have guns don't have them. So it's an issue that I'm passionate about. But here's the thing about me. I've been working on a lot of issues for a long time, and I'm passionate about a lot of things. So I always try and find commonalities and kind of ways to tie one of the things that I care about to some of the others, so that there's some good connections to bring in new people into the fold.
Okay. So, and then lastly, can you talk a little bit about what your goals are for yourself in the upcoming years?
Yeah, so right now I'm in the last year of my term as a state representative. I am not running for re-election for the legislature because there's an opportunity. There's an open congressional seat here in Southern Arizona. So I've been running since May of 2021 for a race that will be in 2022. It's a really exciting opportunity to grow not just the Latino caucus and the LGBTQ caucus, but to have the second open Latino member of Congress who's gay, the first being Congressman Richie Torres. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to serve and to take the lessons that I've learned in the legislature to Washington, D.C. to be able to advocate for things like the Equality Act, but also just to make sure that we have a strong voice helping deliver results for Arizona. So taking a lot of the skills that I've learned here in Arizona to Washington, D.C., but I have a year left in the legislature. So I'm excited about doing a couple more things in the Arizona State Legislature to try and make sure that we're doing as much as we can to protect the LGBTQ community.
So to recap, can you just once again go over some of the things that a citizen who is supportive or has a family member who is part of the LGBT community or a friend and is generally wants to become an ally, what are some of the things that they can do?
So the first thing that I would recommend to folks is to find out who their state lawmakers are. You can do that by going to azleg.gov, and there's an area that says find my legislator. Type in your address, find out who your state representatives and who your state senators are, so you can start building a relationship. Because if you reach out to us, I can't tell you the amount of people who've reached out just to meet over coffee, and I get to learn about the things that they care about and how we can partner together. So I think that's one of the most important things that people can do. The other would be next year when we go back into session, we start on the second Monday in January, to go to the legislature, ask to meet with your state representatives in their offices, go and sit in on a committee hearing. Find an issue that you care about and see if there's a bill that's being written about it. And if not, reach out to lawmakers and say, hey, why aren't we working on this issue?
Okay, and I actually look forward to when you are elected to is it Congress in the 2022 election to actually to see the kind of work that you're going to do on behalf of the LGBT community. I am really grateful that you came on.
No, thank you so much. It was good to see you again. And like I said, I always have an open office policy. So if anyone ever wants to reach out to come in and meet or to shadow me for the day, it's a really great opportunity to learn how your state government works. So always feel free to reach out. And the best way to do that is to call my office, and you can find that number on the AZLEG website, or to email me at dhernandez@azleg.gov.
So do you meet with the individuals who are not your constituents?
Yeah, if people want to reach out, I'm always happy to host. There are always opportunities for people to come and spend a couple of hours shadowing me to see what the legislature is like, or just to come and meet me at my office and get to meet a legislator who is going to be friendly, and then I can help introduce you to your state lawmakers.
So do you? So this is happening actually now. Like the COVID restrictions are not something that are getting in the way of that.
So we're not in session yet. We go back into session in January.
So, but you are. It is possible to actually come in person and do some of the things that you just mentioned.
Yeah, so we'll be back in session in January, and I'm expecting there wasn't restrictions at the end of session. So if there wasn't any at the end of last year, I don't anticipate that there will be very many restrictions, other than probably having folks wear masks who are coming into my office.
Okay. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, and it was so lovely to see you and to talk to you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
There's a new part of me, a part I want you to see. You haven't seen the best of me, I know.